This is Mrs. Taranjo with Domain 2, Lesson 6, The Creation of Earth and Its People. Our objectives are to determine that the theme of this Maya myth is an explanation of Earth's creation and its people, to identify words or phrases in sentences and develop sentences that compare and contrast ideas, explain how adding the prefix inner changes the root word and how to correctly use that in sentences, and to decode and encode targeted spelling words. The key vocabulary will be very familiar because it goes along with the text. Generation is a group of people born and living at the same time. Sacred, holy, or deserving respect. Creation, the act of making something new. Vast, large or great in size, amount, or extent. Nurture, to care for something or someone so that he or she flourishes. Rigid is stiff and inflexible, and warp is to bend or twist out of shape. Our purpose for reading the text today is going to be reading the same chapter that we read last time, but this time we have a different purpose for our reading. So remember, every time we read a text, we might read something more than once, we have a different reason for reading it. The purpose for today is to better understand the characteristics of a myth that are included in the creation of Earth and its people. The big question is, how does the sacred Maya myth explain the creation of Earth and its people? So that is our purpose for today's reading. I will pause the video I will hit pause for about 5 seconds for each page. Feel free to pause and read carefully as you go through the text. Okay, so now we have some questions we're going to go through. According to the text, what are the characteristics of a myth? It explains how and why things happen. It makes sense of a predictable and unpredictable events, and it's passed on from generation to generation. So these are what makes it a myth. Which point is the author supporting by including the following sentences in the text? Some things, like the rising and setting of the sun, are predictable. Others, like floods and earthquakes, are often unpredictable. Myths help make sense of these events by explaining why things happen. So even though we can't necessarily prove for sure if all these myths are true, it makes us feel a little bit calmer to know, if there's an explanation for things that happen. And there's many myths that at multiple reasons, like, why is the sky blue, things like that. There's many myths that go along with it that explains the why, kind of just comforting. The gods wondered, what good are these non-thinkers who wander aimlessly about the earth? What is the meaning of the term non-thinkers? Beings who could not think about their lives and be thankful for what they had. Let's kind of just go about life as they said, wandering aimlessly. Which of the following sentences from the text provides the best clue about or evidence of what the author means by the term non-thinkers when discussing the wooden people? Without any memory of their creation, they made no effort to honor the gods with gifts of thanks. Our word work for today is nurture. So as you can see, I changed the background. So this is an example of nurturing by giving these plants their seeds, planting them in the ground with good soil, giving them water. That's a way of nurturing. So they could honor and nurture the gods as the gods wished. So nurture means to care for something or someone so that he or she flourishes. So by giving it water, fertilizer, sunlight, we're nurturing these plants. This is actually a verb. So now we're going to be talking about words that compare and contrast. So these are going to be very familiar because you probably in previous grades talked about compare and contrast and keywords that you would use for them. So we're going to focus on words and phrases that compare or contrast. Words can show the relationship between sentences or parts of sentences by connecting or linking ideas and pieces of information. So if we're going to compare something, remember that is things that are similar. Well, you might say, this is similar to this, similarly this, likewise, in the same way, just as, at the same time, additionally, also. And it's not just limiting that either. These are just a few examples. There are other ways, words and phrases that you can use, but these are the more common ones that will connect two sentences together or connect a sentence's ideas together. Now, words that contrast, remember, contrast is differ, how they're different. We might say, however, in contrast, on the contrary, alternatively, whereas, instead, on the other hand, and but. Again, this is not limited to just these phrases, but these ones are ways of writing a sentence that can compare and contrast within the sentence without, having a Venn diagram and things like that. You can actually compare and contrast within a sentence. Now we're going to be looking at the prefix inter. So inter means among, between, or together. So this can be added to the beginning of nouns, verbs, or adjectives. And some examples are interpersonal, international, intersect, like intersection. So think about an intersection when you come to a red light, how the roads kind of all come together. That's a good way of remembering the word inter because that's where they all come together and the in-between part. Okay, we're going to introduce the spelling words. So the first one is population, the number of people living in a particular place. Tropical, relating to the tropics, an area near the equator where the weather is very warm. A pyramid is a large structure with a square base and 4 triangular sides that form a point at the top. Empire, a large territory or group of people under the total control of one ruler or government. Peninsula, a piece of land almost entirely surrounded by water that is attached to a larger land area. Civilization is a group of people living together in a well-organized way. Rainforest, a tropical wooded area with very tall trees that gets a lot of rain. Indigenous is produced, living, and existing naturally in a particular area. Temple, a building devoted to religious worship, and a monument, a building or statue that honors a person or event. Feel free to look through at the next part. These are example sentences where you would see these words used. And that is the end of our video for today. You're going to complete your assessment and send it to your teacher, and we will see everyone in the next lesson.